Okay, hi everybody. Welcome, psychology senior researchers. My name is Annie Erdman, and I am a member of the IRB, but I am here today as a library staff member. So I'm one of the 3 faculty staff members in the library that are here specifically to help you with any sort of research that you might need. Today we're going to be focusing on your IRB application. This is the first lesson we're going to do regarding IRB. There will be a second lesson that's going to be taught by Lisette Torres-Gerald, who's the director of the Cooper Center. And she will be talking to you about good peer review and really helping you to help each other put forward your best applications. Okay, so I have handouts. So if you could, they're in the corner, if you could pass those out. This is what the application looks like. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about the website for the, bless you. We're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the IRB website, what you can find there, and then we're actually going to talk about a library guide that's specifically designed to help you in your IRB application process. So if you are, in your apartment or your bedroom and you're like, oh my gosh, what did she say? What's happening? Or if you have a friend who's going through the process and they need more resources, you can point them to these 2 resources, okay? So again, my name is Annie. You can feel free to ask any questions you want. This is pretty informal because there is 6 of you, which is nice. Okay, so Institutional Review Board website. Do you all know how to access this website? It's in 2 places within our website. It's right under our About. So if you go to nebrwesleyan.edu and you go to About, Institutional Review Board is under About. That's a federal requirement, so you will see it there. It's sort of up there with Title IX. So Institutional Review Board, pretty darn serious. And we'll talk a little bit about the history just briefly. The second place you can find it is on the inside under Academic Resources. Okay, so you can find it in 2 places. This is the information that you will find there. So Institutional Review Board, it's absolutely critical that if you are doing research with human subjects on campus with the goal of distributing the knowledge, you have to go through an institutional review process. So this is great experience for you to have here at Nebraska Wesleyan because you will absolutely see this in hospital clinical settings. You will absolutely see this in graduate school. And if you are familiar with the process, you're just going to have a huge leg up on everyone else. Okay? So the purpose of the Institutional Review Board, I know all of you did the NIH training. So who can maybe talk to me a little bit about why we do this? Yeah.
To make sure your research is ethical and going to be beneficial for society and science as a whole.
Okay, absolutely. Yep. So what time period was this implemented?
After the Milgram study, right?
So it's actually relatively recent, right? So if we think about how long we've been doing scientific experiments in the U.S., it's honestly only been the last 50 or 60 years that we've really been paying attention to, are we doing ethical things when we do experiments on humans? Okay? So if you'd like more information on that, you can check out the Belmont report. Does that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, that's a good sign. Okay, so what we require as a part of the Institutional Review Board process, and again, this is a federal mandate, so if you are at an institution that is receiving federal funds, you must go through this. Nebraska Wesleyan is. So everyone must complete training. So you all did National Institute of Health training, but the campus now has training through something It's called CITI, Collaborative Institutional Training Initiative. This is also where you can find animal research training. Okay, have you talked about that?
Not yet, I mean, with this meeting here. So.
Yes?
I've taken CITI training.
You've taken CITI training. So there are lots of different modules available. I took a training at my last institution that was for principal investigators. So those are people who are running labs or people who are really in charge of the entire research operation. So that would be like Dr. Petro, Dr. Alam. Those are the folks who are really like, they know what's going on, and they are the folks who are really supposed to, pay attention to what's going on. But the nice thing is it's got all sorts of things. So it's got principal investigator training. It's got a training very similar to the NIH training you did, and it has research for animal research. So if you are participating in rats or I think amphibians, dogs, anything like that, that is available through there. So that's really good. We also, is this touchscreen?
Yes.
Okay. So I also made it really clear which module is required. So if you are talking to any of your friends or underclassmen, you have to, for our purposes, your certificate must have human subjects research as a part of the curriculum. Okay, so we also have our members. Our members are made up of various members on campus. That is purposefully designed. Our current chair is Justin Scary, and we have our contact is irb@niebuhrwesleyan.edu. So if you have any questions, or if a participant in your research, wants to talk to somebody in the Institutional Review Board, that is a great way to do it.
So we have to have the NIH training and then also the CITI training?
No, you are required to have one.
Just one, okay.
The NIH training is no longer available for free.
Oh.
Which is why you did it last semester.
Okay.
Okay? The CITI training is available as a campus community member to use for free. The library pays for the subscription, so that's where all your tuition dollars go, right? All right. And so I just want to highlight the resources that we have available on our website. So we have our IRB policies and procedures. Now, I understand that you read those last semester, so that's good. We have the application itself, so that's what I printed out and brought. We've got checklists for faculty sponsors. So that's a great way to have a good conversation with your faculty sponsor. It's a good conversation piece. Are they doing what they need to do? Are you doing what you need to do? We have specific information about exempt and expedited categories. We'll talk about that a little bit later today in the hour. We've got templates for consent, informed and consent and assent. Thanks, Nebraska. 19. And this is also really important, the reviewer rubric. You will use the reviewer rubric next week when you do peer reviewing. Okay? And then when you complete your research, you need to fill out this form. So when you're all done, you need to inform the IRB also that you're done. So that's kind of nice. Any questions about the website or what's available? Does it make sense? Okay, great. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to look at this handy-dandy library guide. Ooh, yeah. This is so fun. I don't have a touch screen.
Then you get used to it and wonder why the others
Yeah.
do that.
Okay, so from the inside, we're going to go to the library website. And we're going to go to research guides. And there's a long, long list of research guides here. After today, there will be a guide that will be there, and it will say IRB. But it's a little bit hidden right now because I wanted to get your feedback on the guide itself. Is there something that you think is missing or would be helpful, etc.? You can get there by going directly to libguides.newberwesleyan.edu/IRB. So you all can get there. It's just not on the list yet. So what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about, so this guide, again, it has the purpose, right? Why are we doing this? What is the purpose, right? We want to make sure that we are, using those ethical standards that we've all been trained on. And then what we're actually going to do, I'm going to go over and talk about demystifying the institutional review board, the process itself. Okay, because sometimes it can be overwhelming and kind of intimidating. Not necessarily scary, because it's kind of bureaucratic, right? This is to make sure that we have evidence to provide to the federal government that we're doing what we have to do, right? So, first step, after you've completed your application, this is your first engagement with the IRB, okay? Your faculty sponsor submits for you on your behalf, okay? Second step, the IRB chair or our coordinator assigns the application to 2 different reviewers, so those people on the list. We don't know who's assigned. We don't get to talk to each other. So it's blind in sort of a way. And then the other thing that's really interesting is, so we have a member in the psychology department who's on the IRB. Dr. Alam does not really review psychology applications. And it works the same way with Dr. Fitzke. No nursing applications, right? So we're really trying to, again, be ethical and make sure that we're having a really clear eye when we look at things. Okay. Once I get it as a reviewer, I am going to pre-screen it. Okay? So I'm going to make sure that this first page, this right here, and this second page is complete and correct. Okay? So things that we're specifically looking for is completion and that you have selected the correct category. We'll talk about that a little bit also. Okay? Next step, you've done it. Step. Then we go to the rest of it. We pass through door 1. You're complete. Okay? So, next step, we progress down the rubric that is on the website. We honestly just go straight down that rubric. Okay? And we make notes. And usually we are spending a lot of time on the informed consent part. That's one of the most rigorous parts that we're looking at as reviewers. Okay? And we really do try to have a quick turnaround time. 3 to 5 business days, we really do try. Next steps. You can have one of 3 outcomes for expedited applications. You can be approved. You can be approved with modifications, which I think is the most common. Okay? And then not approved. You will always be given an explanation of why you were not approved or what we would like to see in terms of modifications. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if you're not approved, can you resubmit with modifications?
Yes.
Okay.
Generally, if you are not approved, that means that potentially you are doing an experiment that is not approved on campus. We have certain things that we just don't have the resources here to manage, so we don't allow them. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Yeah. And those are in the policies and procedures. Mm-hmm.
So then for that second option, the approved with modifications, so then if, say I already get that and then I did my modifications, I could then, run participants without resubmitting?
No. You are, so we'll get to that.
Okay.
Step 8, research may proceed. You may not start research until this process is completed. Okay? Great question. All right, so next step, basically we give all of our feedback to that coordinator or chair, and then they send an email to your faculty advisors. And then you will discuss what happens with your faculty advisors. what type of modifications you need, and then your faculty advisor, once you've made those modifications, resubmits. Okay? So you and your faculty sponsor are really teammates on this. You need to have a good communication strategy. Pay attention to your emails. The IRB does not text you. We will not do that, right? Okay, so, all right, resubmitting. Once you receive approval, you may proceed with research. Does that make sense? Okay, great.
And you always recommend like a cover letter addressing each of the issues that the IRB brought up and how the changes were made in the application.
You can absolutely do that. You can do that, yes. You can also highlight things in the application. You can, make notes, like footnotes. How you addressed, that's fine. So one of the things I really want to emphasize, and I think I put it in here. Right here. If your application is not complete, the review process logistically takes longer. Right? So think about when you want to start your research. Think about how much time you need to do and build in to get through IRB. Okay? So our process is actually pretty accessible, right? There aren't too many hoops you have to jump through. There aren't too many people you have to talk to, right? So you have to talk to your faculty sponsor, and you have to and your faculty sponsor talks to the IRB coordinator. Okay? If your application is not complete, it will take more time. If you need modifications, it will take more time. Often you need notifications. So don't be upset if it comes back and you need some modifications. Okay? Yes.
So, mine, I'm like working with children, and I know that's a protected group. So I have two questions regarding that. In the policies and procedures, it says that we need to be in contact with the IRB if we're in a protected or using a protected group before.
Yes.
So is this too late to start talking to the IRB about it?
So what I would do is I would email IRB in advance, and I would start a conversation. Okay. So I would say, I'm planning to work with children, which is a protected class, et cetera, et cetera. You might also want to look in the city training and see if there's any additional training on children that you can do, and then maybe you could say I even have a certificate, I've done additional training, things like that. Okay. Yeah. And then that is certainly not required at this point, but I'm sure that the IRB chair would come back and say, we strongly recommend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. And then also, I was wondering, can I start contacting places to see if they would even be open to, allowing me to talk to the parents or children there?
So we will talk about that when we go through the application. The answer to that is yes. You will absolutely need a site permission. Mm-hmm. And so we will talk about that in the attachments on the back. And you will need permission from each site. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think she was asking if she needs IRB approval before she can contact the sites.
You do not need IRB approval before you contact the sites, because your application for IRB needs the site permissions in it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Often often the sites want to see this kind of information anyway. Mm-hmm. Depending on how well your research paper that you did last semester is completed, you want to be sharing that type of information with your site. Okay. Yeah. And then if you have additional city certificates saying you've done training for populations of children, they also want to see that type of information. Okay. Okay? All right. So we're going to come back to the first page. All right. So preparing for your application. Okay. So we all have the application. You've completed your certification. You need to read this again, right? So we all did this last semester. We, glanced at it. But you need to reread it, the whole thing, okay? You need to develop your research proposal. So you did that last semester. I cannot stress enough that the quality of your proposal, right, you all did it last semester probably for a grade. However, I can tell you that a lot of the parts for your research proposal are going to directly correlate with parts on the application. These boxes expand. They look tiny. This is just 4 pages. Your research paper, so let's look at the first box, right? Background. This can be 4 pages long, right? If you put in a paragraph, you are probably going to not be approved. Does that make sense? Quality. Okay, quality. All right, so let's talk about the type of review. Yes, yep.
Just, because it says provide a brief summary.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you don't want, all 10 pages of our intro from our proposals.
Right.
But you say it should be, around at least a couple pages, it could be?
Probably, yes. Okay. And we will get to that in the next tab.
Okay.
We will do that in just moments. Okay, so let's talk about determining review category. So we've got 2 categories that often get mixed up. Okay? So category exempt, category number 2, and expedited, category number 7. Okay? I have also added in these awesome decision trees from HHS, Health and Human Services. So if you're having trouble figuring out what type of research you're doing, these are really helpful. These 2 categories get mixed up a lot because they both explicitly say if you're doing a survey. Okay? So the big difference between exempt and expedited, exempt means that you are exempt from review. Your research is so everyday that there is no possible ethical question involved. That, walking across the street involves the same amount of risk as taking this survey. Does that make sense? So you are exempt. If you feel like you are exempt, you will submit your application. The coordinator or chair will review it, and then you will not be approved, really. You will be confirmed, or they will basically come back and say, yes, we have verified, based on the information you have provided, that you are exempt and that you do not need IRB approval. So, again, very, very low risk. Really, any other type of survey is expedited category 7. Does that make sense? So even if you're asking questions that may trigger emotions for people, right? You're going to be expedited category 7. Expedited category 2 is, what is your favorite color? Do you like dogs or cats? That is, honestly, we see a lot of people who think they're exempt category 2, and they are not. Okay? Does that make sense? Who's doing a survey? Ta-da! Okay, right. So you are definitely not exempt because you have a special population. What, do other folks think that they might belong in either category?
Expedited.
Okay.
About drug use behavior.
Absolutely. Expedited.
I am probably going to be expedited, but could you be expedited in more than one category? Because I'm doing surveys, I was thinking 7 and 4. I didn't know if I could record
you pick
more.
one. Good question. You pick one. And I think the decision tree might help you decide what you're going to do. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I'm working on like cognitive tasks along with the questionnaire.
Okay. Yep. So you are going to be expedited for sure.
That's probably a different category.
Right. But probably a different category. Okay? All right. Honestly, this is super helpful. Mm-hmm. Yes, tell all your friends. These decision trees, while clunky and 1995-esque, honestly really do help. Okay? All right. So let's actually take a look at the application itself. Okay, so let's take a look at this thing. Page number 1.5. This is your cover sheet. Okay? So, again, it's important to have the right type of category. This is all of the data that we need to keep about your project. Again, we store all of this on campus for federal regulations. So all of this information needs to be accurate. Okay? I've seen things come through that they don't, put an address in there. Just use 500, St. Paul Avenue. 5,000. You have to have information, you have to have data in there, okay? Make sure that you sign it. I've also, sometimes we get so excited, you do all the work, and then you don't sign it, or you don't put a header on, or something like that. So make sure, because this is your gate, right? When you're doing the review, the person's going to look to see if it's complete. So if so next week when you're doing peer review, make sure you got everything. Okay. So now we have a box for each section. Okay? So section number 1. Again, how much do you put in? How much do you leave out? How do you edit and tear down? Okay? These are the things you absolutely need. I think for your class, you also probably have hypotheses, yes? Okay, not every study does, but for your purposes, the way your assignment is designed, you do, okay? So think about what I need to see as a reviewer. I am specifically, by design, not a psychology person. How are you going to give me the background I need to make me understand why this is important? Or what's the context? How do I even understand what you're saying to me? So vocab words, you need to define specific theories that you're engaging with. You need to define if you're engaging or verifying another study. I need to know about that. This is the section that will probably have the most in-text citations, right? So, again, in your appendix at the back, you will have a references page. And honestly, we do the same thing like we would reading a research paper or a research article. We look at those references. So make sure it is clean. If I look at your reference list and you've got a whole bunch of references or citations and they're not in text, what's going on? That is a waste of my time, right? So make sure it's clean and that I can easily follow it, okay? Any questions about this? I know we had questions before. And I'm not going to put a page max or minimum. It's up to you. Right? I've seen applications, honestly, if it's less than a page, that makes it hard to do my job. Because I generally don't have enough context. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm going to say loosely more than a page, but probably not the whole 10 pages.
So maybe like our abstract and then just like more into it like that, or is it going to be more
than that?
Well, yeah,
what
but like.
you do is you're going to condense your introduction.
Okay.
So you'll still need most of that information, but we'll condense it.
Mm-hmm. So, and I would say, if it's several pages, that's fine. We'd rather you have more pages than less. It actually makes our job to review the rest of it a lot easier. Does that make sense? Okay. Section number 2, population and selection. So I know in your training you did a lot of quiz questions probably on this. Who are you recruiting and why, and specific? Right? Does it need to be these people? Is your sample size large enough? What are you going to do as plan B if your sample size is not large enough? You have to include all your consent and assent in the appendix. This is also something that happens a lot. People do not include their email invitations, advertising, posters, Facebook posts, Twitter posts, Twitter tweets. Sorry. All of that, right? How are you recruiting? All of your informed consent that needs to be in the appendix. You will definitely get a modification if you don't have it in there. Okay, does that make sense?
So if I just like end up calling these places, do I have to like kind of make a log of that, or like how would you want me to?
So you could include that.
Okay.
But you are actually going to include materials that directly engage with your participants. So any material that you would be putting or recruiting parents.
Okay.
Right? Or anything like a poster that you're going to put up at the site.
Mm-hmm.
Or an email that's going to be sent out from the site to all the parents.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Sorry.
Email and correspondence to the site directly, gaining permission. If the permission is within the email itself, then you need to include that.
Okay.
But if they send, I've also seen folks that actually get a letter from the site, like on letterhead.
Mm-hmm. Just
include the letter.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. All right, any questions about population and selection? Okay? Data collection. Okay? So this is actually something I think a lot about in terms wearing my library hat. Think about your data within a life cycle. Where does it begin? How's it going to die? Right? How are you going to secure that data at every point? How are you going to back it up? How are you going to replicate it? Right? Because we all hear these stories of, oh my gosh, I lost my thesis. Right? That same thing can happen to your data. How do you prevent that? Okay? This is also the space where you can talk to us about what you are using in terms of your tool. So what survey tool you're using, how you plan to manipulate the data, things like that. Any questions about that? So the other thing we see a lot here is people just do the generic, they copy and paste things that they found on the internet. I believe, yeah. That's pretty obvious in this section, right? So you need to say the data will be kept by Dr. Petro in the psychology office in this space. It will be deleted in 3 years because there's a calendar event, or, it needs to be specific. Okay, does that make sense? Sections 4 and 5, risks and benefits. Okay, this is on here because often we see either there are no risks, which is totally not true, right? So if you are in an exempt or expedited, you have risks. You're just not being creative or thoughtful enough about what those risks are. Okay. Worst case scenario, what happens? Get creative. Okay? You need at least one. You are definitely going to get a modification if you don't have a risk. Okay? And the same goes for benefits. If we get, and this happens, if we get applications and there's no benefit, why are you doing this study? Is it ethical to waste people's time? That's things that we talk about, actually, in the IRB. They're like, well, that's a kind of a tricky question. Let's engage Dr. Scary to have that. Yeah.
So on the actual application here, it says justify the potential risks. What, instead of just listing our risks, how would you like us to explain our justification?
Yeah, so a justification is why you're going to do it anyway, right? So this study has these risks, and it's important to do it it's important to do it because of this, this, and this, and we are mitigating those risks by doing A, B, and C.
Okay, so like if I have started mine and I've listed all the risks, could I then just make like one justification instead of justifying each one separately? Okay, that makes more sense.
That's okay. I think that would be okay.
Okay.
Yeah, unless it's fairly obvious. I mean, so this is your seniors at this level, right? So these are also good questions and discussions to have with your faculty advisor. Okay. Informed consent. This is the most important part. Okay. So all the other parts are very, very important. However, and I didn't even add much information to this box because we have so much information within the policies themselves. So informed consent is pages 9 through 13 in the policies and procedures. Okay? So really making sure, I couldn't put 4 whole PDF pages in this box, but I specifically did not really add bonuses or little tips and tricks because this really does have to be by the book. Okay? Yes.
So we had those like in our appendices from our research proposal. Yep. So do you just want like that exact copy then of what we had there, or did you want us to kind of like?
So you have to talk about it in this section.
Okay.
Right. So you will absolutely have the template and the forms, but you need to talk about specifically what are you going to say to participants as they come in the room? How are you going to follow up? What does, it's more in-depth, more detailed. So it's kind of, I've also seen applications that look like scripts almost. Or almost like the life cycle of your research project, right? So I sent out these posters, or I sent out this email, this is what it said, the person responds, this is how I responded, then they take the survey, or I meet them, this is what I say in the survey, this is what I say during the survey, they can leave at any time, and I follow up the survey with this. Right? So making sure that the research subject is really informed at every stage.
So this is not just how you have them sign the informed consent and that they get one copy and the store one copy. It's more than that. It goes on through.
Yeah. So it's all of those communication things that you are doing with your research participant. How are you informing them at all steps and stages? Does that make sense? And then I will say that if you do not include information that they can leave at any point, or, again, this is what we go through with a fine-tooth comb. So it is very common that the modification is related to this. But again, the nice thing is we'll give you suggestions. It'll be a guide. Okay, let's talk about these attachments. Okay, so sometimes I see people put X's here. That is not appropriate. You need to have letters or numbers. Appendix A, Appendix B. You need to have Appendix Roman numeral 1. Right? This is a guide for us to find. You can also add things to this. So I think we've got, site permission letters is on there. But if you have something else that you would like to add it to the list. This is a Word document that you create. Does that make sense? Okay. The only other thing that I found a little bit confusing is on the header template, it says protocol number. You will not add that. The IRB coordinator will add that after it's submitted. Does that make sense? So just leave it blank, and it will be assigned to you. Okay, we are in the last few minutes of class time here. So does anyone have any questions? Dr. Alam, Dr. Petroji, is there anything you want to add? How do you feel?
I feel that you did a fantastic presentation. Thank you, Annie.
Sure. Yes, it can be overwhelming. Yes.
Site permission letters. If we're using our psychology pool, do we need permission from us, from the department? Okay.
Yes, you do.
And that is, I am the faculty advisor. I'm also the chair who gives those site permission letters.
Yes.
So if you have an expedited category,
yes.
you can't have an exempt category, right? You just have one category.
That's correct. There are two different things.
Okay.
So we've got 3 categories: exempt, no risk,
right?
Basically. Then you've got expedited. It's a little bit risky, but we'll be able to go through pretty quickly.
Okay.
Then there's the full review, and the full review, I think you might have to go through the full review because you're using a protected class. But that's why you need to email the IRB and just say, hey, I'm planning to do this research project, and you will engage with the process. If you are proactive in communicating, then the process is going to go quicker.
Okay. So, but would I be category 7 then, since I'm a protected class? Because I was looking at them and I was just kind of having a hard time figuring out what.
Sure. Let's talk about that specifically after class. Okay. Yes. Any other questions?
So just remember, you work through it piece by piece.
Piece by piece.
Don't get overwhelmed. Just, let's start with the background. Or if you're very comfortable with your methodology, just go in there to that procedures for data collection and start explaining that. That's where you're explaining the design of your study and how you're collecting this. And we throw in that information about where the data is being stored and for how long, how it's being secured, how it's de-identified. So we're doing those things.
Is it okay if our methods section's a little lengthy too? Because I have several parts
Sure.
in there. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I would say in this process, more is okay.
Okay.
Yeah, is there a page maximum?
There is not.
Okay.
No, there is not.
But you can't just put your proposal.
Yes.
Can't copy-paste my
right,
whole
don't put your whole research proposal in there. That's something different. But the nice thing is, do you feel like you found sections of your research proposal and you can see where they plug in? Yeah, okay, good. Good. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.